Welcome back to the Leverage Podcast, where our goal is simple: to learn from the best and discover how we can all live a better life, build a more fruitful business, and be more productive. Join us each week as we interview fellow entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and leading experts to discuss everything from marketing secrets to new technology and life as an entrepreneur.
Hello and welcome back to the Leverage Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Sonnenberg. The other week, we had Maren Kate from Zirtual and also a remote hiring expert. And in this episode, we sit down with Sara Sutton, the CEO of FlexJobs. And if you don't know what FlexJobs is, it's one of the world's largest hiring sites that helps people find remote or flexible jobs. And it's been on my radar for a while now, and I'm really excited to finally chat with Sara. This conversation was awesome. She's got so many great insights on remote work from both the employee and the employer side. And we had a really great discussion around the future of work and how remote work will play a role. With everything that's going on due to COVID, a lot of companies are realizing they can switch certain roles to remote without any downside, especially if you have all the infrastructure and systems and tools that we talk about. But FlexJobs has been impacted by that, of course, and Sara goes into some of the trends she's been seeing throughout this crisis. We also get into a lot of cool things Sara's doing at FlexJobs, including how she's been able to win multiple culture awards as a fully remote company. I always say that you can run a remote company without sacrificing culture, and FlexJobs is one of the best examples out there. We do get into the tools that they use in order to facilitate remote work, but also in this episode, we get into some of the simple methods and practices that they utilize within their company. They throw remote birthday parties, have coffee together. They even have a system for remotely knocking on someone's door. Pretty much everything that you could do in a normal office, they figured out ways to do it remotely. It's pretty cool. And obviously, I'm always curious about how remote companies operate internally and what tools they use. So we get into some of that as well. And I even learned a few new tools, which some of you might be interested in. We're still working through a lot of our backlogged episodes, so keep in mind this episode was recorded back in June. But again, the content's super relevant to everything that's going on today. So with that, let's get into the episode and see what Sara has to say. Welcome back to the Leverage Podcast. Today's guest is Sara Sutton. You might have heard of her company, FlexJobs.com, which is one of the world's largest job sites. It's an honor to have you on the show today, Sara. I've heard about FlexJobs for so long, so I have so many questions for you. I'm looking forward to diving deep into future of work, what you're seeing with FlexJobs, tips and tricks on both sides of the market for employers and for freelancers or job seekers. So super excited to have this conversation. And I did a little bit of background research. We have a few things in common. So what did you study at Berkeley? I went to Berkeley. I graduated in 2007.
Go Bears!
Yeah. Where did you live in Berkeley?
I lived, I will confess. I first lived at Parker, which is the furthest dorm on campus.
Yeah.
And then I was in a sorority, which was not something I ever expected to do, honestly.
Which sorority?
Tried out. We had food and it was like right on the corner campus. And it was an interesting experience. I never thought I'd do that, but I actually still some of my closest, most amazing women friends are.
Well, I was in a frat. I did Berkeley for grad school. I went to Santa Barbara for undergrad, but I was in a frat in undergrad, and some of my best friends are still from the frat.
Yeah, it's an interesting experience. And Berkeley is such a big school. I think it ended up being quite useful for me. But but to the question of what I majored in, I dropped out of Berkeley actually to start my first company, which was entry-level job service. The first online entry-level job service. But when I went back, it was the first time I ever worked remotely. I convinced my company that was based in Connecticut to let me telecommute from California. I said I could work East Coast hours and go to school in the afternoons and evenings. And I ended up combining my original undergrad with what I was most interested in. And so I did an interdisciplinary of society, technology, and the environment, which interestingly actually comes very full circle to what FlexJobs is all about. So,
okay. Well, for those that are listening that maybe have never heard of FlexJobs, why don't you give the pitch? What is FlexJobs? How does it, I'm curious, like from your standpoint, how do you differentiate from some of the other platforms that people might have heard about?
Sure. Well, FlexJobs is dedicated to helping people find remote and or flexible jobs. So by flexible jobs, we count anything outside of the traditional on-site, strict, rigid 9 to 5. So that could be remote work, partial remote work. It could be a part-time role. It could be a freelance contract, a flexible schedule, essentially, again, anything outside of those parameters. And we do two other elements that are really important for every single job on our site. It is a professional level job, meaning it has some kind of career path oriented with it. And it also has been vetted for legitimacy. And particularly in the work from home and remote fields, that is something that is increasingly important, not just because of the normal scammers that are out there, which tend to be much more savvy than people realize, but also because during times of duress, like the recession, and now with what we're already seeing with coronavirus, and the scammers are coming out with aggressive abundance. And so
what kind of scams, like when you say scams, what kind of scams are people doing on these sites?
It's really varied. I mean, I think most intelligent people are like, I'd be able to tell, no problem. But it can be very subtle where a scammer will take a domain of a well-known company and change it slightly, and buy that domain name, duplicate the site so that it looks very similar, contact you with a name that happens to be the actual director of HR from that real company. So for example, like UnitedHealthcare-Inc.com. So instead of UnitedHealthcare.com, they would change it to UnitedHealthcare-Inc.com.
And then they'll reach out to a freelancer looking for a job?
They reach out to lots of different people, but they'll say, hey, we'd really like to hire you. We're going to send you a laptop. On that laptop, that you'll be able to keep that. That's for you, but we need some pre-installed software on there. And so you have to pay $400 for that. We'll pay you back in your first paycheck. Send that over, and then we'll get it all in the mail to you. And because you think it's actually United Healthcare, a very legitimate organization, you let your guard down. And
they're telling you to install software, so they're putting malware and viruses on your computer and sucking information off of your computer at the same time?
They just never send you anything, and you send them the $400 for the software.
I wonder if it's another scam where they actually do send you software, but it's like you're installing their virus and then they take your credit card information and other stuff.
Well, there are lots of scams where they send you things, particularly like cash checks, where you're supposed to then pay them out to other people. The scams are abundant. There are a lot of different kinds. They change all the time, but most of the time they're trying to get either your cash up front, your bank account information, credit card information, ID, anything like that.
I mean, I could see the ID, but I mean, if an employer asked me to pay them up front, I can't imagine where that wouldn't feel like a scam to someone.
So what happens also is that when people's defenses are down a bit because they're desperate, they're extra hopeful, they're really hoping, and you think, oftentimes they do fraudulently use these trusted companies' names, because then you'll let your guard down more. You think, it's a good company. They're not going to scam. That's not a scam. Right.
No,
but they're incredibly successful. It's why it's one of the big, if you look up COVID scams right now, it's whenever people are a little extra, unemployment is high, let's just say, these come out with even more force than normal, and they're there all the time though.
So from say you're a freelancer looking for a job, what are some of the competitive advantages of them going to FlexJobs versus Indeed or Upwork? I mean, I know some of the answers, but I'm curious to hear yours. And then also from the employer standpoint, what are some of the reasons why people are doing it on yours versus in the others?
Sure. Well, we do all of these things. We vet all of the jobs. Indeed, and a lot of others, they do screen, but they're accepting data in from so many different aggregated sources, meaning they get jobs input through job feeds from over thousands of different sources. So they're not screening with the same level of critique, and they're also not classifying them the way that we are. We have a team of researchers that really know this inside and out, and make sure we actually make notes to our users if something is a little off, or, you go to this page and you go directly to it. So one of the benefits is that we help job seekers get the most direct way to apply to a job. Just that's it. And then we also go to great lengths to clean our database to make sure that they're fresh jobs. We also have a lot of other resources for our members, such as soft skills training, expert training, discounts on products and services that might be complementary to your work style or life. We have a whole bunch of career resources, career services offerings, and regular Q&As with our career coaches, and as well as significantly discounted offerings for career coaching and resume review as they relate to remote work.
So when you do the vetting of jobs, you're checking, I guess, to make sure that the job is still open or the company's still around. I guess that's one first filter. And then are you checking to make sure that it's a real job, like that the job is real, or that the job is well described? Like, is that another thing that you're checking for, that the job description
is clear enough for someone to say, hey, this is interesting?
So the three things that our jobs are always vetted for are legitimacy, professionalism, and some kind of work flexibility. Beyond that, we're always looking for quality jobs. We're always looking to make sure that the job posting has enough information. If it doesn't, or if it doesn't pass our team's guidelines, then we don't include it. We always are looking for any red flags that make it seem that it's not going to be a high quality enough job. We also don't allow any commission only, MLMs, anything that's not an actual paying job in our system. So really we focus on high quality, and then we support all of that with the ongoing career support and kind of partnership and resources for people to be developing their skills so that increases their chances to get a job, as well as to develop further their careers once they get the job.
And then post-job, after someone gets the job, are you offering support for them to be successful or to help them get promotions, or it kind of stops the customer journey?
It doesn't stop. I mean, we have resources, content, we do webinars, we have the career coaching again. We have a lot of resources for people to do these soft skills courses if they want to continue to develop those, which are great in personal life, as certainly in business, and it can help you develop into a better leader or get further along in your career. So there's a number of different resources we have, and we have a lot of people who stay on. Freelancers particularly tend to use our site for a long time because they're constantly looking for new opportunities. And then for other people, we have people who stay on just for the ongoing career and kind of development information.
I'm guessing with Corona, the whole world has changed. What patterns have you seen on the platform? Like what were some trends and some common use cases or things that you found in terms of job search on both sides before Corona and now after? Has anything shifted?
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, with unemployment so high, it definitely shifts quite quickly.
So you got a spike in people looking for jobs on the platform?
Yes. I mean, yeah, it's definitely had a significant amount of interest, particularly also in remote work, because we cater to this very specific flexibility, but the majority of our jobs on our site have some kind of remote component, and not just during coronavirus, but post-pandemic, remote work is going to be something that is here to stay, often in hybridized situations. And most of the jobs on our site have some element of hybridized, but not all. Many of them are also work from anywhere.
And hybridized means it's like a couple days a week in the office, a couple days remote, or what's your definition of hybridized for those listening?
It means that there's some kind of geographic component to it. So you either have to live in a certain area. You might not even have to go in the office, but you have to be in a certain area. I
see. So it's like you have to be on like East Coast time zone, but there's no office to go into. Gotcha.
Yeah, so there's some geographical component, and sometimes that is to go into the office for certain training or meetings occasionally or what have you. It also could be for tax or legal compliance issues for the employer, though.
Aside from the spike and the spike in people looking more for remote, are there anything in terms of particular types of jobs or other surprising insights that you've gathered looking at the data in the last few months?
Across the board, more jobs and far more industries, people have had to open their minds on how they can integrate remote work. So for us, it's not that surprising. We've always known that these jobs can be done in almost any professional level, at least to some degree, because most professional level jobs have some element of independent work. And quite honestly, most professional jobs right now already prior to COVID included some kind of remote work because we all use our devices, our phones, our laptops to work from home. It's very rare that somebody exclusively 100% works at their desk in an office. So this has been there, but it's really this global work from home experiment has forced organizations and workers to identify that they are remote working and that this is what they can do and how it can work. Because it's been an emergency situation and under duress, meaning even for us as a remote organization, and we are only remote, it's still hard for us. I have 2 children, so it's a whole different deal when they were in school and I don't have childcare. And so even for the pros of remote work, it's hard.
Well, how are you handling that both personally and how do you guys run under the hood internally? How are you guys run to operate efficiently and remotely?
I mean, we have a lot of different tools and platforms that we use. We've used Zoom forever. It is interesting, though, in the last 3 months, I've had more video calls than I have in 13 years. We actually don't use video internally, not as a protocol, at least. It does happen occasionally, but so
how do you guys communicate internally mostly? Just in Slack?
Phone, Slack. We use another platform called Sakoko as well. We've used Yammer over the years. Different teams have different, tools essentially, whether it's project management or collaborative oriented or both. But we actually lean on phone phone and screen sharing a lot. I think that the human voice is a little underestimated in what you can, listening. And I actually think that especially when you're not an experienced remote worker, I think that using video can be particularly stressful. And I think it's also quite distracting. You have more technology challenges and snafus with video due to bandwidth than you do on phone. And you also have a lot of distractions. It seems like you've thought this out. You have a nice backdrop. I have a backdrop. I've tried to plan that I look professional, because when I have had to do video in the past, it's typically something I've had to level up, because I'm interacting with people in an office and there are certain expectations. What's happened now is that everyone is kind of just winging it and trying to figure it out. But it's stressful to have people in your personal space sometimes, especially if you're not used to it.
At my company, Leverage, we've been remote since the beginning for 5 years, and we've never had an office. But as much as possible, we try to force people, if we do a Zoom, I mean, we don't have like an open Zoom that people are always in or anything like that. But if we have anything that we really need to discuss, we prefer to use Zoom so that people are still getting the face-to-face interaction. So you're not losing that component that you might get if you were physically in an office. But it's definitely a balance of not being on a Zoom. You don't want to be on a Zoom all day long.
Yeah, and I think it is a balance. And I think it's just paying attention to which communication medium works best for which different elements, and also for which people. Some people being on Zoom, it actually really does stress them out.
Really?
Other people, it's something that's much more comfortable. I personally am somebody who dislikes being on video. I don't love it. It's something I realize I have to do, but I have other teammates who similarly feel the same way. So if I ask them to do it all the time, I'd have to think, why am I doing that? Is it benefiting me? Is it benefiting them? Or can I hear what they're saying? You can detect a lot from the human voice. You can see hesitancies, you can hear stress, etc. So
do you guys do like quarterly offsites internally with the team, so you still get some level of face-to-face?
Yeah, we do team-specific offsites typically, not now, but it is something not everybody, but we definitely, I value being in person with people, and I do value face-to-face connection. But I think what the opportunity is with remote work is to rethink how you work and don't just fall into what is assumed is beneficial, but to really think, are you getting the benefit out of this particular technology or this particular communication?
We do team leadership in-person retreats. Now we're taking a break, but we do a few a year. And it's amazing that just seeing someone a few times a year in person. I used to work at a bank, so I was 60, 70 hours a week in person on a trading desk with my colleagues. And I don't feel any more, or I don't feel any less connected to the team than I did when I was in person with a team, because of the way that we're able to operate in a remote environment. But by using the tools in the right way, we've developed a culture and a connectedness that when we meet in person, it's like as if yesterday we were sitting next to each other on a desk. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's seamless. And I think that when you think of offices and being in person, there's a lot of fear around not having that. And what does that mean? But it's also important to remember that there's a shadow side to offices too. I've certainly worked in toxic environments and offices.
Totally.
And who and where you and how you work with people is more about the culture of the organization than it is about where you are. And as you know, I'm happy FlexJobs has won numerous culture awards as a remote only company, and that's because we really do value the human. And I've gone to great lengths, quite honestly, as has my team, in appropriate ways of thinking, how do you conscientiously translate what's best in an office into a remote environment? And then what are the things you don't like about being in office that we can let go? So it's been very intentional.
Well, I mean, we have plenty of people on the team, like Andrew, our head of growth, was commuting an hour every day to get to his full-time job. Now he is 2 hours less in the car. He has a walking treadmill. He spent February in Mexico in warmer weather than Toronto. So there's so many benefits if you can do it right. And also, the obvious stuff, when you're in an office, people can just come over to you and start distracting you and taking you out of flow state. So if you have it set up right, which I feel like we have a pretty good handle on it, you can get so much more done. But what are some of the tricks or techniques or things that you do that you feel have allowed you to build such a good culture that's winning you remote culture awards?
Again, it goes back a little bit to that conscientious thought that goes into how do you translate. Our organization is a very mission-driven one. I believe in remote work. I believe in the benefits for it, whether it's alleviating commutes, whether it's being able to include people in the workforce that are previously pushed out of traditional strict on-site models, working parents, people in rural areas, people with health issues. Well, the list goes on and on.
And to think that the very best people in the world that can work in a certain role live within 30 miles of your office is
to be able to hire the best person for the job, period. Not just in my local area. And so I think that there are elements of we really believe in just being human forward. I think that we really try to treat our team with respect. We try to translate the culture elements, including the fun ones, into what would be remote, so that people feel valued. And I do think that one of the elements organizations right now who are having to integrate remote work, even if they remain in a hybridized state post-pandemic, have an opportunity to rethink some of their benefits and their culture elements to translate to remote work better. For example, a lot of companies might have like after Friday drinks or, ping pong tournament or something like that, which is great. But if you're a working parent who has to get home to relieve the babysitter, you're left out of all of those, and that can go a lot of different ways, how you slice and dice it.
So do you guys have like a happy hour on Zoom on Fridays with the team?
We've done trivia hours. We do, trivia nights. We do, we do pizza parties sometimes where we deliver pizza to people's houses and have a pizza lunch.
That's nice.
We do.
Actually, that's a really nice idea. And then you get the whole team on a Zoom and you're all eating pizza together.
We've had baby showers for colleagues. We've had one of the ones, we had a writer who was having a baby. And so we asked people on the team what their favorite childhood books were, and we ordered them and had them delivered to her house. And then we had a video where she got to, open some of them, and we got to celebrate her, and we sang cupcakes.
Wow, so I really have to step up my game on thoughtfulness.
It's, I think but there are parts of that, right? Like a birthday party on site, great. But for remote, you can send flowers, send pictures, send cards. We had, you can sign little individual cards, take a picture of it, and then put them all together in one image for someone. There are good ways you can do it. And it's not just about the niceties. It's also about understanding that these are elements of helping people live a better life and alleviating some of the stress from commutes and from other areas that they might not enjoy to be in work.
Are you using any software services that help you to enhance the culture, like any performance review, or I don't know, there's things like 15.5 or Bonusly, like where you can give each other props in Slack and then people could get points that they redeem for gifts. Have you experimented with any of those types of services?
We do a couple. We do Perked as a culture pulse. So we, ask questions, Perked, where we ask people more insight, like how are you feeling? Do you feel that you understand, how's the company handling COVID? Do you feel comfortable talking about it? So a real culture pulse. We have something that I think for birthdays, I can't recall the name of it, to be honest, where you can choose your own birthday gift so that there's a certain amount and then you can choose what you'd like if you prefer. We use Yammer as a free version, even as a platform for kind of and then we don't use Facebook that way, but we use it kind of little groups. So there's run, walk, bike group. There's a reading club group. There's a pets as coworkers group. There's parents group. There's a lot of social elements that happen around culture, and they're initiated by employees generally. So it's just something that opens up the door for those kind of organic elements. I think there's a lot of talk about the magic at the water cooler in organizations. And so creating kind of virtual environments for that. And also harnessing the good of the virtual water cooler, and not the water cooler can also be the place where people are gossiping and there's office politics and the cons. So really highlighting those positives.
Yeah, one of our Slack channels is the water cooler channel.
Which is great. I mean, we have coffee, people have different coffee chats. We use Sococo, which is, it integrates with Slack and Zoom, but it's an architect schema of an office building. So you can see who's in their office, and you can also see if people are chatting or in a conference room. And then there's certain times where you can say, I'm just going to go sit, at the little, there's multiple seating areas, and then you can just have coffee. So it's like office hours, like you see somebody sitting and you just want to chat for a little bit, you can say, hey, can I join you? It also just knocks on you can hear a knock. I'll be sitting here and I'll just hear as if somebody's knocking on my door, but it's through Sococo, somebody knocking on my architect schema door saying, hey, can I just come in? And so it's very seamless. It's nice.
Gotcha. And so what are there any other kind of tech tools or interesting ways that have allowed you to be successful in terms of operating remotely?
Heavily on a lot of the common ones, I guess. Google, we use Google Enterprise, we use Slack. We've used lots of different tools over the years. Zoom is what we use now for video conferencing and screen sharing often. Depending on the team, I think oftentimes it depends. Some teams have different preferences for different project management tools, for example. The tech team and dev team will use one, and then another. Our employer team will use another. We have a very well-developed back-end admin system that's in-house, so you lean on that as well.
And how big is the team?
We're around 100 people on the team.
Oh wow, it's big.
Yeah, it's not big. I mean, there's a lot of them, but it's big. It's grown in size, and it's
congratulations.
Thanks. It's been fun to be able to help more people. I think that's ultimately what we're here to help people find jobs that better fit their lives, or to find jobs that they couldn't find if they, due to either life situations, geography situations, whatever, to get back in the workforce.
No, I mean, very similar. I mean, with Leverage, we are a freelancer marketplace. So in the same space as you, but just solving the problem in a different way, right? We give companies a team of freelancers that we vetted and trained, and they could use as much or as little as they want. And we're kind of the middleman. So if there's issues or they have to do a complex project that involves 5-10 people, they're not having to hire a bunch of different people. So it's just a different way of it. But really what I'm passionate about is the future of work, and remote work is definitely a huge part of the future of work. And I think what's happening with COVID and everything in the world is just accelerating what was inevitable by 3 to 5 years, probably. What's your prediction with where the world's going and where future of work is going?
Just to acknowledge there's so many layers and complexities and challenges happening right now. Certainly you started out with the pandemic, which then had the lockdowns and online schooling and no schooling and changing the way we work. And then we're layering on the economic crisis, and now, the very important fights for equal rights and anti-discrimination. So the world is, I think, in many ways, has the opportunity to rethink a wide variety of our core systems. How we work, I think remote work is an opportunity to really reevaluate how and why we work, and is it the best? And for a variety of things. It's better for the environment to work remotely, or at least integrated. It's better for our communities. It's better for our health.
For families too, right?
For families, for our community structures and infrastructures. But I think that what's going on around us is forcing us to rethink a wide variety of things. So I think that in the short term, I really hope we can do this in a conscientious way, in a productive way, and really seize the opportunity that we have, while not giving into the burnout and the frayed nerves and the volatility that is very much real right now also. I mean, emotions can go like this day to day for people. And one of the tricks one of the things we do on our team calls often is just to start off by asking people to say a word. How are you feeling? You can do it with emojis and things like that, but just the word. And you go through, any group of people, and you'll have a pretty extreme range of where people are right now. Everywhere from hopeless to optimistic to exhausted to energized. I mean, it's and a lot in between. And so I think it's really important to remember that not just the individual, but the collective consciousness right now is pretty strained. But as we look at that, change is hard. And I really do think that we have an opportunity to rethink a lot of systems. And I think how we work is one of them. And we have to look at the human side of how we work. I could get in a much bigger conversation around capitalism and how it's really gone so far off track from where the roots were, which were rooted in caring about all stakeholders, even the indirect and longer term ones. It's not there anymore. And we really need to get back to that.
What are some suggestions, if you're a freelancer listening to this right now, what are some suggestions that you might give in terms of helping to find the right job, not just a job? And then on the flip side, if you're an employer, what are some best practices or pieces of advice that you could give? For example, we're looking right now to hire a handful of roles. What advice would you give us in terms of crafting the job description and kind of standing out amongst other companies looking to hire people?
For job seekers, it is a tougher market than it was 5 months ago. So I think that part of this is paying attention to the sustainability of it.
My background's in data science, so I'm always liking the numbers. Like if you can share in terms of just like ratios, like if it were 1-to-1 employer versus employee or like person looking for a job say January 1, what was the ratio of people looking to get hired versus people looking to hire? And what's that ratio now, like after COVID?
I'm not a data scientist, so I'm not going to be able to break that down in the most reliable way, but we all know that the unemployment was at around 3%, 3.5% at the beginning of the year, and now it's, 16 something. If you got to be real careful how you do that.
But that ratio has spiked, I'm guessing, on your platform where it was X and now it's gone completely imbalanced on the job seeker side, or no?
No, not for us, actually. We've seen an increase in job posting because remote work is something that has grown.
And you've seen a spike on the job seeker side too, though, you were saying, right?
We have
both
also
sides.
seen that. And in general, though, it's a little tricky sometimes with these jobs. A lot of the pipeline jobs, which is why I would hesitate. Some of the bigger hiring roles right now have pipeline jobs. So
what's a pipeline? What do you mean by that?
They have one job posting and they're hiring 2,000 people.
Oh.
So it's a little difficult. And we work with a lot of employers like that. We do a list every year, top 100 employers that hire for remote work or likely to this year, based on historical data. And a good number of those are pipeline jobs. So the job data, it doesn't always line up with what the number of job postings are on the site. And jobs like online education, customer service, a lot of these roles that are hiring very actively right now are roles like that. But we have seen an increase in job postings with remote work. We have seen an increase in job seekers. There's a lot of energy and interest around this, not just for the short term, but for the duration. And I think there will be a lot of lifestyle choices that are ongoing. And so if I get back to the question around what would I advise, or any tips for a job seeker, I would highlight, especially if you're looking for remote work, I would highlight why you are well positioned for it. Some of those, that you have a dedicated home office, or that you have the technology to support it, or that you have the soft skills such as self-discipline, proactive communication, and certainly any technical skills that you have that make you a very safe, like you can troubleshoot your own computer, for example, or you have certainly the hard skills required for the job as well.
Like if you looked 15 years ago, 20 years ago on a resume, at the bottom, you would see skill sets and it'd be like PowerPoint and Microsoft Word, versus now it's what we're seeing is like Salesforce or Slack or some of the new tools that you need to be able to support remote work. It's interesting, the shift of resume. Absolutely.
And I think even things like, acknowledging if you are an experienced remote worker, if you're comfortable with it, saying, I've dual monitors, or I have my office set up that's really conducive for me. If you're a digital nomad, that might be different. But then in that case, you want to alleviate an employer's potential concerns around that as well. So I think being proactive in how you tee up your expertise or your willingness to maintain a high level of professionalism for the role is really important and a really good opportunity, particularly in cover letters. And then for employers, I think that it's, unfortunately what we see anytime there's high unemployment, employers, they are getting inundated with applications technically, and they can sometimes lower their bar in what they include in job postings. So they don't have to sell themselves as much because they're getting so many applicants in. But what I would encourage employers to do is to not be tempted by that, to try to be as specific as you want in your job posting and really convey the culture of the organization, look for that fit, and try to set that up in the beginning, because you will save time on the end. If you don't need as many applicants if you get a smaller pool of more quality applicants. So just really being upfront with what you offer, what the culture is, what the fit is, and obvious sales skills.
And do you guys offer training to on the employer side to help them with their hiring process and their hiring pipeline, and training them? Hey, look, this is if someone misspells the company name, that's an automatic DQ or something like that. Do you give any training like that?
When companies want it, yes, we offer a lot of consulting options for those kinds of things, or especially when companies are trying to integrate remote or flexible work into their workforce and into their hiring practices. We like to provide support on those areas. But quite honestly, a lot of HR representatives, they know their job very well, and they don't always want that help either. So it's something that we offer if it's of interest, and we have a lot of articles and we do webinars along those lines.
Gotcha. So what's the future of FlexJobs? What's in the pipeline? Can you share a bit about what's behind the curtain?
We really do believe that we've been, I'll say, beating this drum for quite a long time. And it's an exciting time, at the risk of saying that amidst so many crises. But something that I'm identifying, and I've long believed, is that remote work can contribute to many of the biggest issues facing are not just our country, but our world right now. It offers opportunities for a more inclusive workforce. It offers cost savings for companies and organizations trying to be a little bit more lean. It offers more likely gender equity in the workforce and retaining women who typically leave during childbearing years and can't get back on in their career. There's environmental benefits of remote work. So we're working not just on our own platform, but I think a big area that I've always believed in is using this to expose and highlight the many benefits, societal, economic, health, environmental, that it offers. And so, so we are planning to continue to grow. We want to help as many people as we can find jobs that better fit their lives. That's kind of our ongoing mission, and to do that as well as possible and with integrity and heart.
So I want to be respectful of your time. Where can people find out more about you and FlexJobs and everything that you're up to?
No, thanks. FlexJobs.com is our core site. We also run remote.co, which is our remote forward site, which we also have a lot of information on. Yeah, and I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter. Twitter's SW Sutton, and LinkedIn's just Sara Sutton.
Well, thank you so much for joining today. It was great to meet you, and I'm sure that we'll do this again sometime soon. Yeah,
Nick, it's nice to meet you too, and I hope to see you in person one of these days.
Hopefully, if we ever are allowed to do that again, but if not, at least we have Zoom.
Yep. Thanks so much for having me.
No, thank you.
All right. What a great episode with Sara, right? I love hearing about how other remote companies operate, and I think that FlexJobs is doing some really incredible things with all their culture initiatives. I hope that you got a lot of value out of this episode. I know I did, and I think we may be implementing some of the tips from Sara at my company, Leverage, very soon. Be sure to check out her company at flexjobs.com if you need help hiring remote employees or freelancers for your team. And you can also check out remote.co for a bunch of content and tips around remote work. As always, you can find the show notes for this episode at getleverage.com/podcast, along with our free guide for creating a remote communication system with your team. This is something we created when COVID first hit because we saw that so many companies were having trouble communicating as they switched to remote. It's a simple 4-step process to create an efficient remote communication system, just like what we use at Leverage. If you're worried about things getting lost or people getting distracted with emails and notifications, or if you just don't even know where to begin with communicating remotely as a team, this is the guide for you. Just go again to getleverage.com/podcast. This is episode 71, and you'll find a link to download there. It's totally free. It's getleverage.com/podcast/71. And if you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to leave a rating and subscribe. We really, really appreciate it. See you on the next episode.